Being a fundraiser is hard work. Not only is it time consuming, but you have to continually think of fresh and creative ways to engage your donors and supporters. If you need some fresh inspiration and ideas, check out Fundraiser Bot by Donor Perfect. Donor Perfect's Fundraiser Bot is more than just a free tool for nonprofits. It's your fundraising ally, offering you the freedom to focus on your mission while transforming your content creation process. With just a few clicks, you can generate outlines for meetings, emails, social media posts, blogs, text messages, and more. Try it for free at donorperfect.com/bot and let me know what you think. Now on to the show. Hello, and welcome to Nonprofit Nation. I'm your host, Julia Campbell, and I'm going to sit down with nonprofit industry experts, fundraisers, marketers, and everyone in between to get real and discuss what it takes to build that movement that you've been dreaming of. I created the Nonprofit Nation podcast to share practical wisdom and strategies to help you confidently find your voice, definitively grow your audience, and effectively build your movement. If you're a nonprofit newbie or an experienced professional who's looking to get more visibility, reach more people, and create even more impact, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hi, welcome. Welcome back to Nonprofit Nation. Thanks so much for listening today. I am your host, Julia Campbell. Today, we're talking about donor retention and fundraising trends. And what I've seen is as the nonprofit sector faces shifting economic conditions and technological advancements, it may seem hard to keep up. So in this episode, my featured guest is Barbara O'Reilly, principal of Windmill Hill Consulting. Barbara is a renowned expert in donor retention and fundraising trends, and we're going to delve into the evolving landscape of nonprofit fundraising. Barbara brings over 20 years of experience in fundraising and nonprofit management, and her insights into donor behavior and nonprofit success have guided numerous organizations towards achieving their fundraising goals. So, Barbara, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Julia. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So the first question I usually ask is, how did you get started in nonprofit work?
I'm going to sound like the stereotypical answer, which is I fell into it. I needed a summer job my junior year of college, summer of that year, and wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do just when I was going to graduate. And so I just called up the alumni office and asked if they had any work positions open for students. And the director of development had an executive assistant, but he also liked to have students who worked with him to do copywriting of his letters, do research, other staff events and things like that. And so I started working with him that summer and then continued on my senior year. And then when I was graduating, I still didn't actually know what I wanted to do, but thought that I would stay in this for a little while until I figured it out. And so I just moved up to Boston and took a job at Harvard, where I worked there. And again, just as a start of a staff assistant, and then just worked my way up. And again, every time I kept thinking, I'll just stick with this until I figure out really what I want to do. And I reached that point where I actually liked fundraising. I liked working with donors. I liked telling those stories of impact and building those relationships. And at some point I realized that it was past the point of saying I'm still trying to figure things out. And so I've just been, when I was in-house, I was intentionally carving the path to building out a really diverse scope of work of what I did. So working in major gifts, working with events, working in building and managing campaigns, and building and working with corporate funders as well. So that when I became a consultant 15 years ago, I felt like I had enough experience under my belt that I could be credible and I could at least know, sort of, I could say I've walked in your shoes. I can say I've fundraised during all sorts of times with disasters and recessions, and I've been nimble enough to apply proven practices to different kinds of donor audiences in different situations. And so I really love consulting now because it's so, it brings a different challenge for me to, sort of figure out with our clients. And every client is different, and every, fundraising challenge is different. And I just, it gives me great joy to be able to contribute to this sector in this small way.
We started out probably around the same time. I started out 14 years ago after having been a development director, marketing director. And yeah, I also I found that when I started, I really liked marketing more than fundraising, but that sort of changed. That's changed. And of course, a lot of it overlaps as well. So I want to talk today, I want to start with talking about donor retention. So,
Mhm.
why is donor retention such a critical concern for nonprofits today? And then, how can we assess the health of donor retention within our organization?
Yeah, so this is one of my soapboxes that I've developed
Mm-hmm.
over the years because nonprofits are so obsessed with getting more donors, right? I mean,
Yes.
I've walked into, as I'm sure you walked into executive director offices and they say, we just need more donors. And when I ask, well, how many donors do you have? How many names are on your file? And they tell me, in the thousands. I say, we
Mm-hmm.
don't actually need more donors. You need to actually do something with the donors you have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pervasive throughout our entire sector. So we see this in the big top line numbers and the trends. Like there's, as part of the the research that goes into the Giving USA report that comes out every year, the research team at Lilly, at the Lilly School of Family, Lilly School of Family Philanthropy,
Mm-hmm.
no, the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy.
Yes.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
They they've been watching this trend, and the number of donors to nonprofits has been declining by about 20% over the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
We see this also in research that's been done by the Do Good Institute as part of the Generosity Commission work that's also been tracking this trend line, both in the decline of donors, the decline of volunteers. There are things that are um, societal and sort of out of our control of just how we exist as communities and as a society that are contributing factors. But what is within our control is what's happening, the donor experience within our own organizations. And we know from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, all of those tracking of trends, and you know this well, that the donor retention, the average donor retention is like 40%, 43, maybe 42%.
Yeah, it's very
Um,
low.
and if you think about it, like think about it in business, retention, customer retention, if it's 90% or below, that like bells, alarms are going off,
Can
right?
you imagine if Target only kept 50% of its
Oh my
customers?
gosh, right? Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So that whole sense of that donor loyalty, that donor obsession, i.e., like let's keep as many of them continuing to give as possible, is what's missing in our mindsets in the sector. So, average like 60% of donors are not coming back. First time donors of average 80% are not coming back. Those right there for any organization it's just unsustainable. We know, like we see this all the time. There are not, nonprofit bandwidth is stretched, it's limited, there are not enough resources going into fundraising and marketing, and
Mm-hmm.
organs and fundraisers are being tasked with that Herculean responsibility of raising more money with limited resources, and so they're like churning through these donors, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a waste of energy and time and resources. So
Mm-hmm.
if we can rethink um, how we build relationships with donors so that they feel connected, they feel inspired, they feel like that they want to make that additional gift, whether it's a first, second, ongoing gift. That's what's going to make the difference. And without that, we're going to, if we continue on this trajectory, the as Nathan Chappelle,
Mm-hmm.
my friend and colleague, talks
Yes.
about in his generosity crisis book, If we continue on this trajectory, the percentage of donors, people who are giving to nonprofits, is going to be in the single digits in 50 years, right? So
Wow.
think of like, I think that's, I do believe that that's sort of the extreme. I think things could change, but that's not an encouraging trajectory to be thinking about. So we have it in our control to be turning that table a bit and building those relationships in a way that can boost those numbers for our own organizations.
So I'm always interested in seeing how other people are thinking about sort of digital communication and technology. So, how have you seen both of those things impact donor retention rates? And are there any tools or platforms that you find effective for increasing donor retention?
So I've seen it. I can't say that I've seen a correlation in terms of improving retention.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen an over reliance on
Yes.
digital, right? And I know you have as well,
Mm-hmm.
where it's digital first, digital only. But we know that different audiences prefer, I mean, first of all, multi-channel is just going to be the way that's the most effective, regardless of the generation or the audience. But it's still important to be bringing in that digital component, because we're all on our digital devices. We're all on the social media platforms. We are online shopping. We're doing stuff, one click pay on Amazon. We're streaming stuff. Like we're on our
Mm-hmm.
platform. So it's right for us, for the nonprofit sector, to be there, and our organizations to be promoting in those ways and communicating, but not to the exclusion of the other ways, like human contact, phones, print, letters, right? Notes, even handwritten notes, in-person meetings, those things. I hear so often fundraisers are like, I don't have time for that. I'm just going to send an email. I'm just going to send out this e-blast. But if it's not in conjunction with the whole picture of how to build that relationship with that donor, where they prefer to be communicated with, how they interact with that organization already, then that's where I see it really not help donor retention overall. So text messaging definitely and I know you see this too, is an untapped opportunity. Phone, even just leaving voicemails. There are lots of different platforms that can do
Mm-hmm.
the like no ring voicemails, that just as a way to slide into someone's voicemail with,
Mm-hmm.
you get a human voice on, and they are surprised and they hear from somebody, and it connects with them in a different way. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think those are the ways that I've seen it not help donor retention, but just only doing digital. But when I've seen it work well, it's all integrated with each other. So it's a print piece that is corresponding with an email, with some sort of web promotion, online promotions, social media. There's some
Mm-hmm.
connected links there. And then there's that human element of the personal follow up by a volunteer, by a staff member, by a board.
Mm-hmm. I recently became a monthly donor to an organization, and they called me and they left a voicemail, but my voicemail specifically says, like, I don't check my voicemail. I'm terrible about checking my voicemail.
Uh-huh.
So it says email's the best way to reach me. So they emailed me and they said, hey, we just called, left you a voicemail. No pressure. You don't have to call us back. We just wanted to thank you. I thought that was so wonderful because it was
Yeah.
listening to your donor. First of all, getting a phone call is really very special. Like,
Yeah.
even though I am, I'm a Gen Xer who's supposed to love phone calls, but I don't like phone calls. But getting a phone call is very, very special. Getting that voicemail was special, even to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then getting that email and it really probably took 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, for us in business, when someone joins a course that I'm selling, or when someone purchases a product from me, I try to really reach out personally, even with an email or even just a little video or something, to say, hey, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know there's a lot of different competing things for your attention and your money. Like, I'm just really appreciative that you wanted to join me on this journey.
Mm-hmm.
And if we could do more of that, I do think that's something that can cut across all generations
Uh-huh.
that people would appreciate, because we're so afraid of annoying our donors. And can you talk about that? Like, we're so afraid with
Mhm.
that we're communicating too much, or we're annoying them, or we're irritating them, when in fact, I feel strongly we're probably not communicating enough at all. Do you see
1,000%
that
agree.
as well?
1,000% agree. Yeah, for sure. And I totally agree with you that there's that fear of like we can't talk to our donors for a lot of different reasons, right? Like A, I don't have the time.
Mm-hmm.
B, I don't know what they're going to say, but it's probably going to give me more work to do.
Mm-hmm.
C, it's what if I, what do I tell them? What do they want to hear from me? Right. And we forget the basics of just like having a human conversation. So
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I find this sometimes. So I've been volunteering at my daughter's school to do thank you calls and do follow up calls for the annual fund.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Don't ever tell the school that you're good at fundraising.
no, they know.
I made that mistake as well. First mistake.
I
Just kidding. But
yeah,
yes.
no, they do. We've had
They're like, oh, fundraising
my
consultant?
they're my peeps. They
Yeah.
totally know who I am. So
Yeah.
and they appreciate that this is something that I don't normally volunteer to do, um but I found myself, when I was doing thank you calls to donors to the annual fund, thinking like, oh gosh, okay, because I know how I feel on the other end when I get a call and I don't recognize. I'm like, who the heck is calling me, right? So I was calling and
Mm-hmm.
would get some people picking up the phone, and I'd say, hey, I'm just, I introduced myself. I said, I'm just calling to say thank you. You've made a gift this year to the school, and I just want to say really appreciate your support. And these are some of the things we're doing. And it was like you could hear it in their voice. And
Mm-hmm.
then they're like, tell me more. So, oh, what grade's your daughter in? And then
Yes.
we started having this conversation, and then I learn about their kids, and and they were so appreciative of that call. And I same like you, like when I get thank you calls from organizations that that we support, usually I miss the call because I'm not answering
Mm-hmm.
the phone. But when I get that voicemail, I'm like, oh darn it, I missed it because I wanted to talk to that student, or I wanted to talk to that staff person.
Mm-hmm.
It also uses a different sense, right? So we're hearing, and you can hear the genuine gratitude. You can hear the appreciation. You can hear who that person is on the other end.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky enough to get to speak to that person, then you have that conversation and say like, oh, hey, tell me about your experience. I'd love to learn more about, oh, you're a student there. If I get a call from a student of an organization we support,
Mm-hmm.
and that just makes me feel like, oh, right. Okay. My gift, it may not be helping this particular person, but I get it. Like I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate what's happening on that end of the exchange. And so it's, we just, we fear having the conversations, um, I think unnecessarily,
Yep.
because in my all my years in this sector, the best gifts come out of the relationships. The best gifts come out of understanding who that donor is,
Mm-hmm.
what drives them, what doesn't, where their interests are, what are the decision factors that go into their gift,
Mm-hmm.
and how they make their gifts. So those are the things that you can only gain from conversations. So all of the other channels are useful and important for kind of sustaining the impact reporting and thanking and all of that. But we have gotten away so far away from having actual conversations that I think that's part of what we need to kind of come back to
Mm-hmm.
start to build those relationships again.
I completely agree. And I also think that I know for me as a development director, I was always worried, oh, I can't call everybody. I
Yeah,
can't do this perfectly.
right.
I can't send out thank you notes to every single person. So I'm not even going to send them to five. And
Yeah,
I think that's a misguided mindset, because if you can even just reach five people a week in that personal way,
yeah,
and then maybe you reach the rest via email or via text
yeah,
or via a mass market tool. But that personalization, that connection, and then for me as a development director, it also helped reconnect me to the mission
Yeah.
when I would talk to people and say, oh, I was having a bad day, but oh, now I really get it. And this means
Mm-hmm.
a lot to this particular donor. And here's why. So
Yeah.
that's a great actually example. So for nonprofits that are struggling with low donor retention, what are some of the like initial steps that you recommend to start turning the situation around?
So, first of all, getting a real good handle of what your numbers are. There are a lot of tools that are accessible, that are affordable, some are free. To be able to just run your numbers so that you understand what your starting point is. What are your donor retention metrics? What are your average gift metrics? What are your trend lines looking like? So, um, and no matter and I've we've worked with organizations that have not had the best numbers, but it's a starting point. We just needed to know what's that baseline so that we can build that plan for growth and then be able to track against it. And so first of all, just getting a handle on that. Then on looking at what that donor journey looks like. So when a person makes a gift, what happens, right? And if you don't know as a development leader, then make a gift to your organization to find out, or have somebody be a mystery shopper and make a gift to see what that experience is like. We do that sometimes with our clients just to see what it is on
I
from
love
a
that.
completely objective perspective, and then look at that gives you a very fresh view of what the timing sequences is like, what the channels are like, how are people getting those thank yous, what's the messaging, what happens after that first or second communication. So even if the organization doesn't have it mapped out like in a sequence or in some kind of written document that maps it all out for everybody to see, it's important to then go through that experience so that you can kind of chronicle it and then be able to do a little bit more nuances in it. So it could be that your first time donors are going to get, maybe they just get a pop-up, say thank you so much, and then they get an automatic thank you and that's it. Hopefully not, right? But then what happens after that? And
Mm-hmm.
building out, okay, what are all the things that we want this donor to know? If we know our first time donors are on average 80% of them are not coming back for a second gift, what is it that we have to front end to make them feel welcome, to make them feel like they made the right decision, to make them feel more informed? And you build that into that series. And so part of that is asking for their feedback, like why did you make that first gift to us, or what's important about this mission to you personally, and so you can kind of get to what their story is, because every gift has a story behind it. Whether it's that first gift or that repeat gift, every donor has a reason why they're giving
Mm-hmm.
to that mission, to that organization.
Mm-hmm.
So figuring out what that journey looks like, and this does not have to be overly complicated. I recognize that
Mm-hmm.
every organization is going to have very different bandwidths and capacities and staffing, but it has to be, when you look at it in its entirety, is this thanking enough? Is this reporting back in a way that's talking about the work that's moving closer towards that vision of what we set out to do?
Mm-hmm.
And is this offering enough calls to action throughout the year of that donor's gift to invite that donor back to make another gift, to be involved in a different way,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's volunteering or doing some other involvement, whether it Facebook fundraiser or some other promotion, and that entirety, again, as simple or as complex as the organization makes it, has to be thinking about, at the end of the year, what do we want that donor to feel, and what do we want that donor to understand and be
Mm-hmm.
inspired to do again. And if we can make them feel welcome and part of a community, and that we appreciate who they are, no matter whatever their gift level is, they will likely stick around. Um, but if we don't get that messaging right often enough, and it's not, we're going to add them to our email newsletter and check, we're done, we've done our reporting.
Right.
It has to be those stories. It has to be the, hey, you're a recurring donor. Let me tell you, every month, let me tell you what your gift is going to do for us this month. Those
Mhm.
sorts of stories are super, super important.
Exactly. It's just showing donors what the money went to. Or if you are not an organization where you can say, and I know a lot of organizations cannot say $50 will buy you, 10 dog beds.
Yeah.
That's fine,
Yeah.
because I give to a lot of organizations that are involved with systems change, like Invisible People.
Yeah.
They don't actually provide services to people experiencing homelessness. They're working on advocacy and narrative change and legislative advocacy, or Acumen, working on alleviating poverty. I mean, these are
Yeah.
not things where they can say $50 goes to
Yeah.
XYZ, but it's helping organizations, like you said, it's helping donors understand the bigger picture, the world you're trying to create, like your vision for the future,
Mm-hmm.
and inviting them along the way. So I think I loved what you said about that. But I want to talk about, since I have you, you're an expert in fundraising trends. I want to talk about trends in giving.
Mm.
So over the past few years, a little bit has changed. We've seen shifts in how donors engage with nonprofits. What are some of the most significant trends that you've observed in giving, and how can we adjust to accommodate these changes?
I think we could spend like hours talking about this, but
That's true. That's a whole keynote right there.
for sure. I'd say the ones that catch my eye and give me the most cause for pause are the disappearing donors. So
Mm,
we talk, the Giving USA reports that come out talk about the aggregate kind of how much in contributed dollars are we estimating has been given to the nonprofit sector. And the headline last year was about 499 billion. And the headlines were giving is down because it was down from adjusted for inflation about 515 billion the year before.
mm,
That wasn't the headline. It shouldn't have been the headline because we
mhm,
had two extraordinary years in 2020 and 2021.
mhm.
So it was not surprising that 2022 was sort of settled, was like level setting, right? So it was
Yes.
just adjusting. That shouldn't have been the headline.
It was like everyone's going back in person. Well, of course. Events, in-person events have a 300%,
Right,
attendance rate. Okay.
right.
I see what you're saying. It's just level setting the playing field.
Yeah. So yes, generosity continues to be extraordinary,
Yes.
but people are giving in different ways now. So people are exercising their generosity differently, which is why we're seeing
Mhm.
it in the stagnant and declining donor retention trends, while we're seeing this in the declining number of donors and volunteers. People are giving through GoFundMe campaigns, through Facebook fundraisers, through mutual aid. That and they're to them that's being generous, and it is
Mhm.
being generous, but it's we can't yet quantify it in a way
Mhm.
that gives us a handle on um, how much are people being generous, right? We can track giving to nonprofits because that's
Mhm.
all reported, that's publicly available information, but how everybody else is being generous in other ways
Mhm.
is
Me giving $25 to like Teacher Appreciation Week at
yes,
school
exactly,
and all of that is
yes,
not quantified in these reports.
Ra-
That's really important
yeah,
for people to
roundup.
know. That's a great point.
Yeah, so or roundups at the register, right? When you're buying
Mhm.
stuff, yes, ultimately it gets to whatever organization, but it's hard for us to really as to be able to track what those trend lines are for individuals. So that's one piece, but the other piece is that we've seen that rise in mega gifts over the last number of years, and how many times have we heard, well, we've just got to get to Mackenzie Scott. How do we get to Mackenzie Scott? And
You
that,
can apply.
yeah,
Yield Giving.
I
Go
just,
apply on our website. It's free to apply. But yes,
yeah, yeah,
that can't be the be all end all
no,
philosophy.
no, and that the trends for the mega gifts is starting to skew the numbers a bit, but it's also distracting. It's that shiny object that's
Yes.
distracting
Yes.
everyone. So what's happening is under the surface, the donors under $500, 500 and below, are starting to disappear. And so we're seeing this. We're seeing this in terms of retention. We're seeing this in terms of the ultimate decline of them. That they and we started. I started noticing this in reports like going back as far as 2018 when the Tax Cut and Jobs Act went into effect. And we started, sort of seeing like a little bit of murmurs about these donors at kind of the mid-level, 500 and below. It's not mid-level, but you know what I mean? Like that sort of that
Mm-hmm.
range, they were starting to not continue to give. This is a trend that we're seeing continue. And so as nonprofit leaders, we have to be thinking about our donor audiences as a whole and not getting distracted by the shiny objects of can we get Mackenzie Scott money, or who
Mm-hmm.
are our mega donors that we can get to. We have to be thinking about our whole donor ecosystem and an audience, and make sure that we're building in that right donor experience for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they all kind of tie together, right? So those donors who are generally like, I think 98% of the donor population are starting to disappear to the exclusion of, or to the distraction of the bigger gifts. So if everybody starts chasing those mega donors, of course the attention is going to focus there and not at
Mm-hmm.
all the other stewardship and relationship building that needs to happen with the donors of other levels, as well.
Mm. This leads me to my next question, actually segues nicely. With so many different generations, we have access to the mature, the silent generation, baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and then
Mhm.
maybe Gen Alpha. We have to start thinking about it. How can we adopt different strategies, or what should we be thinking about to engage both the older donors and this rising sort of Gen Z demographic?
It's about how it's not just the obvious channel preferences,
Mm-hmm.
for sure, but it's the messaging as well. And it's
Mm.
the expectations that the younger audiences, the younger donors have in the relationship that they want to have with the organization. So being more collective, being more part of a community, having a greater insight into how their gifts are going to be used. That level of trust is determined by that sense of transparency. And I don't mean this in a the organization's keeping things behind the curtains sort of thing, but it's they want to really honestly know,
Mm-hmm.
is my gift, and am I going to make a difference? How am I making a difference? These are sort of
Mm-hmm.
general questions that we talk about with all donors, but particularly for
Mm-hmm.
the younger generations,
Mm-hmm.
Gen Zs, this is like a non-negotiable for them. Older generations are much more willing to kind of let that, forgive that, or not be as insistent as part of their giving decisions. But the Gen Zs for sure are looking for all of those ways that they can be involved, both in terms of the channel, in terms of the messaging, and in terms of their involvement. So, they might not be able to give the large amounts now, but they want to know how can I amplify this organization on my social media platforms. How can I be involved, as a volunteer in some ways, or is there any other way that I can also help to amplify this work and be a champion?
Mm-hmm. And there's going to be that huge transfer of wealth I keep reading about. So we can't ignore the fact that, that baby boomers are getting older.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what's so interesting about what you said is I find that, my parents who are baby boomers, they are much more impressed with sort of legacy and
Yeah.
institutional accomplishments.
Yep.
This organization has been around for 100 years, or the board chair is someone they know, or they're very
Mhm.
impressed by that. And then I have a sister who's 28, and that does not impress her. That's not going to
Yeah.
impress her. It's like, can she run a marathon to support them? Can she, is there something that she can do monthly? Or is it something where I know there was a local event where she could bring her dog
Mhm.
and meet other dog owners? And it was just like so relevant to her and her age group.
Yep.
So I do think that's important. I think when we think about demographics and generations, like you said, we think, oh, TikTok for Gen Z, mail for boomers. It's not that linear.
No, no, because we know that the younger generations, like, Gen X, but even below us,
hmm
are like millennials and Gen Zs do like getting mail.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's like new to
I
them.
love getting mail when it's something I want to read,
Yeah,
but I
exactly.
look through every piece of mail every day.
Me too.
I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I think when we were talking earlier about the digital, the use of digital in donor retention, if an organization is only doing digital, they are missing out because people, what do we get in our mailboxes now, right? We're getting, like, think about our own email inboxes, right? And it's like, it, for me, I know it's a lot of mass control alt deletes. But the mail, like,
hmm
most, if it's not a bill or junk or something I've ordered, like, it will get my attention saying, oh gosh, great,
hmm
I got this thank you note, or oh, I got this whatever, right, from an
hmm
organization, or for something, from a friend or whatever. So it's just a nice way to get people's attention differently, so
Yep.
that I might get something in the mail and think, oh, I'm going to make that online gift. It doesn't mean I necessarily want to be communicated with online. It's just the way I want to give. But yeah, thank you. Send me that offline communication, that print piece that's going to remind me, to sit on my desk and remind me, okay, I've got to make those gifts, or I've got to reach out to that organization to see what I can do.
Right. And I know a couple of organizations I give to that send me a newsletter that might be cost prohibitive for some
Yeah.
organizations, but I keep it on my coffee table. And
Mhm.
then people come over and they see it and they're like, oh, I didn't know you were a member of Mass Audubon, or,
Yeah.
I didn't know that Beverly Bootstraps was doing this. And it's just I feel like it's so much more powerful to share a piece of print with someone than to send them an email, because everyone does that. Right.
Yep.
And it's so easy to ignore. So we could talk for 20 more hours. I will have to have you back on the podcast, but I want to hear, how can people contact you, work with you, connect with you? Where do you spend time online, and what kind of services can you help people with?
Yeah, for sure. So, whillconsulting.com is the website for Windmill Hill Consulting. That's the best place to find me and to reach out. We've got a contact form if people are interested to learn more. LinkedIn is also, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so that's a great place to reach me. We work with organizations to do development assessments and strategy and planning. We work with them on their donor engagement strategy, especially, and that's really
hmm
part of the work we do in helping them improve their donor retention. We help with campaign planning. And we're going to be launching a mastermind coaching cohort in August. So the website is the best place to find that information, and you'll be seeing it also on social. But those are going to be 6 sessions, small groups, real-time coaching for everyone's going to be in a hot seat, and real-time coaching for those, so that executive directors and fundraising leaders can really get that space to be able to think and work through issues.
hmm As we wrap up here, what is your best piece of advice for that busy, stressed out fundraiser trying to do it all?
First, you can't do it all. So really focus on what are the things that are working, what are the donor audiences, the channels, the activities that are the best ROI, and you can know this by looking at your numbers and seeing where you've had the best traction. And second, just remember that this is all about relationship building. So spend 15 minutes a day making calls, writing notes, sending emails if you have to, but really intentionally build that time, and intentionally build the time of your executive leaders, if you're not the executive leader, to reach out to your donors and build those relationships, because that's ultimately what's going to carry you and help to build those transformational gifts over time.
Barbara, thanks so much for being here. I know I'm going to see you at several conferences this year, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Likewise.
But thanks again for just sharing your wisdom and your expertise.
Oh, it's always great to be here. Good to see you. Thanks, Julia.
Well, hey there. I wanted to say thank you for tuning into my show and for listening all the way to the end. If you really enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app and you'll get new episodes downloaded as soon as they come out. I would love if you left me a rating or a review, because this tells other people that my podcast is worth listening to. And then me and my guests can reach even more earbuds and create even more impact. So that's pretty much it. I'll be back soon with a brand new episode. But until then, you can find me on Instagram at JuliaCampbell77. Keep changing the world, you nonprofit unicorn.